I'm Garland Thompson, Media and Program Manager for the Salinas Public Library. These interviews are presented as part of Salinas Stories. The interviews are as recorded and do not necessarily represent the views of the City of Salinas or the Salinas Public Library. For further information, see the City of Salinas Disclosure and Use Policy.
I'm Sandy Bartlett. I'm a volunteer with the Salinas Public Library, and I'll be conducting the interview with Mr. John Conley, his wife Jerry Conley, and Jerry's sister, Pat Garlinger. Pat and Jerry are part of the, they're daughters of the Adcocks.
Yes, R.W. Adcock.
Yes, R.W. and Catherine Adcock.
Right.
And they were pioneers in the Salinas area. So what I really wanted to start with was what it was like, when you were born, if you don't mind telling us what year, where you were born, and what your earliest memories were, and what it was like growing up in where you lived.
Go ahead,
So we'll start with the girls.
Okay. Well, I was born October 8, 1922 in Salinas, the daughter of Robert and Catherine Adcock, and he had met my mother because she had come down to visit her aunt, who lived on the corner of Pajaro and Harvest. And my dad's family, it was a large family, 2 girls and 5 boys, and they met there. And my mother's aunt was a matchmaker, so she called my dad over to meet Catherine, who was a beautiful redhead, by the way. And so they fell in love, and they got married. And my dad was working for the post office, and he purchased a house on Maple Street, 16 Maple, wasn't it?
21 Maple Street.
Yeah, 21 Maple Street, And
Isn't that it?
Yeah, that's it. And they tore it down,
Yeah.
But anyhow, that's where I was raised until I was 4 years old, and by that time Jerry had come along. And one day I decided I was going to walk downtown and sell a bucket of dirt to somebody downtown because I thought I could make some money. And unfortunately, my next door neighbor, darn her, picked me up and took me home, and I got a spanking and put to bed. I can still remember that. And so then the folks got worried. I think Jerry maybe I'd come along.
And when I was about 2, went out in the street, and Mom said I almost got hit by a big truck. Well, of course, the big truck was probably one of those old-fashioned things. That's when they decided to move out.
Yeah, so he bought 20 acres out in the Alisal on the corner of Del Monte Avenue and Williams Road. And there was an old house there, and I think the name that he bought it from was Conley.
Well, you know, isn't that funny? I was trying to remember. I never knew
I think
who
that's
they
what their
bought it
name
from.
was. And they owned this house, and Daddy bought it. And it had a big old barn on it, and it had chicken houses
And a
windmill. And this house, no electricity, an outhouse. And and a big board fence around it, I remember. And that's where he moved us in about 1926.
What was the Alisal like? I mean, the area where...
Nothing.
Farm.
Where did you go to school?
The Alisal Grammar School.
Right
We just
next-
had to climb through the fence.
Right next door was the Alisal Grammar School. It was a, as I remembered, it was a 2-room school at that time, and then they added on another room to it.
How were they divided? The upper grades and lower grades,
Yes.
or boys and girls, or?
No, it was cool.
1, 2, 3, 4,
5, 6, 7,
5. I mean, there were about 5 classes in one, and then 6, 7, 8 in the other. Then they built another room, and that was for the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and then 4th, 5th, and then 6th, 7th, 8th. There were 3 rooms, I think, when we were going. So we just climbed through the fence.
But there weren't, what other buildings and things were out of the
Just
area?
farmland.
Farms?
The Nunes's lived in the big Williams house.
The
on
Williams Road, yeah, well, that was past the school.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, when you went from, it was 3 miles from town. And you went from town under the,
There wasn't an
an
underpass.
underpass, you drove across the railroad track, and there was the old Hebron house, I think it was, and you drove, and it was just fields. You had pigs and cattle, and drove all the way down till you came to the Y of Alisal and Williams Road. This was the Hanson family owned this, which he became Toro Park. I mean Toro, wasn't that what they call it?
Yeah.
Anyway, the subdivision, the Hanson subdivided it.
And that, the old man who lived in that house, we always call, he wore a great big old cowboy hat, and we called him Big Hat.
Big Hat Hanson, yeah.
I wonder if that's how they came up with the barbecue.
Yeah. And so there was nothing, there were just fences and cattle, and I used to remember getting in Daddy's old truck, and we'd drive out there when he'd help somebody, and they'd feed the culls from the lettuce sheds to the cattle.
What did your father do?
This is in the post office.
He delivered parcel post on Main
He
Street.
still was doing that.
Uh-huh.
And when Daddy left for work, he was fit and polished. He had his suit was always neat and clean, his shoes were polished, and he just looked real smart. He was very proud to be a postman, a mailman. And so anyway, there was just all farmland, all there. It was all
Mr.
farm-
On Williams Road, Mr. Closter
Yeah.
lived in a big old house there, and that's where Closter Park is named.
Well, we were wondering about the Closters because there's Closter Park, but there's no information, there's nobody in the cemetery. We couldn't find any information
Well, it
about
was
them.
called Cluster Park. He donated the land to the city,
And,
or a park.
and he
Or a
was
park.
Yeah.
And we used to go.
just a civic-minded person,
Yeah.
very active in the
And
community, or?
we went to school, let's see, Christine Closter was.
I think Christine is still alive too.
Yeah, she was in school when we were in school, and her brothers were older, weren't they?
There was Paul and Ted, and I think there were 3 brothers and Christina, and we played with her.
And we'd
And
go
so-
down and call that almond tree.
Yeah,
in
that
the
great
front
big
yard.
tree there, yeah. It was to the left on Williams Road as you're going like this, and then the next house was Mrs. Meeks. And
Yes,
that's where the library is now,
yes.
in that area. And that later became, that was a dairy, and we used to walk down there and get our milk.
And then where the Jacksons lived, where that big barn, remember the big barn, was that?
Well, that was the same area.
Yeah,
And then you went up there, and then there was the Burkes, Mr. and Mrs. Burke.
Charlie Burke.
Charlie Burke. And he lived right here, and then there was a piece of property, and he built a new house, and they made a little store, the first store that was ever built so far.
Well, when you were growing up, what were your responsibilities and did you have chores that you had to do, or did you just get to go play, or?
We washed dishes. And we played a lot outside. Oh, she was a bookworm. She stayed in the house and read while I was out
Running
being a
around.
tomboy.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about that the other day. I was dusting around my dining room table, and every Saturday we had to do our house cleaning duties. We had to clean up our room. And you remember that? I used to have to climb and dust that great big old-fashioned table, and I thought, oh, I hate this. I hope I never have to dust a table again in my life. And I spent my life dusting the things.
And you know, it was funny. Every time it was after dinner time to do dishes, I'd have the excuse to go to the bathroom.
And I had to do the dishes, and I'd been so mad at it.
But you know, isn't it funny, Pat, on the way home yesterday on the bus, it was getting dark, and John said, there's a star. And I thought, that I was telling him, he's heard it before. That's the star. Remember the dining room? Windows faced towards town. We could see the lights in Salinas from our dining room window, and that was on Del Monte Avenue.
Wow.
So that was 3 miles. And I'd always remember Mom taught us starlight,
The first star, see the night, boy,
I
we
wish I may, I wish I might have the wish I wished tonight. And I told John, I said, I don't even remember what I wished for.
Boy, I can remember what I wished for. I was wishing for a boyfriend.
And he came on a horse.
Yeah, he came on a horse. Anyhow, another thing, we could see the burning of the Salinas garbage. You know where the slaughterhouse is off of
They
John?
probably don't remember that.
No. The slaughterhouse was out there and the garbage dump was out there and they'd burn it every night and we'd see the burning of the garbage.
Oh.
And you know, there was remember that real bad fire up in the mountains? It's got what?
Avalanche.
Well, which is this one?
Well, that's
The
that's the San
Yeah.
Lucia's.
There was this forest fire, and remember Daddy took us up on the windmill, and to see it burning, you could see it at night burning all along the ridge there.
Yeah.
Your windmill, was it functioning? Did it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and you know, Mom, this is right during, after the Depression, and Mom and Daddy raised rabbits, and I can still see, oh, you know, here's my mother, she was raised in Berkeley, and she would they'd kill these rabbits, I think, would they hit them with something?
Hit them on the head.
And then she'd nail the feet up and then pull, I can still see her pulling the skin off of the rabbits. And
Take
then,
it in the house and fry it.
and then there were chickens, and she'd wring their necks, and then she'd put them in a bucket of hot water and then pull all the feathers off of it.
I can do that. My grandmother did that. She could have the chicken, from the yard to the table in like half an hour.
Yeah, and they were good at that.
Oh, yeah.
And do you remember buying chickens with the insides still in the
Yes.
inside? You
Yeah.
have to take them home and take the insides out?
Yes, I do.
And I remember Mom would always say, now when you're taking out, don't cut that
Bile.
bile, it'll
Yeah.
get into the liver, and ruin
Yeah.
the liver, because she used that too.
Yeah. So anyway, we really lived the country life and they had chickens. We had to go out and feed chickens all the time. And we never had a cow, we had a goat. I used to have to go out early in the morning and milk this goat. And I did that because we all had our duties, and I had to go out and get kerosene for the stove. And my dad made sure that we all had duties to do, speaking of that.
And we had a wood stove,
Yeah.
before we had the kerosene stove, Mom had a big wood stove that she cooked.
And before we could take baths, we had to get the water heated up for that. And remember the coal bin there,
Yes.
full of coal?
Yes.
And the man would come and dump the coal in underneath, the tank house they used to have where you'd put your coal under there to keep it for the winter.
Mhm.
And then that's where we knew the brownie lived there.
In the cool.
And the coal. And the brownie, my mother used a story about the brownie. Until we'd run out and put a dish of milk out there for the brownie. He was gone, he was there. But I'm sure it was a cat.
And when Dad talked about milking that goat, there was a billy goat there too, and that old thing stunk to high heaven. Oh, he was awful. And then the nanny got pregnant, and she had a baby, and the baby died.
Yeah, I remember going out to milk her one morning and, now why was I milking? Well, I guess she was giving milk. And then it's kind of quite sequence, does it? Because they don't give milk until after they give birth. But anyway, she lost the little baby and like screaming into my father. And I said, something's wrong with Nanny Goat. I said, there's something awful down there on the ground. So then he had to get up and then he told me what happened. So that was the end of Nanny Goat. So that were some of the memories about that. But duties we did have.
So what about special events? Were there community events, functions?
Grange.
The
That was
Grange.
when we were
That was,
older.
yeah, when we were older.
And we would get to go over when they had whist parties.
Whist
and we
parties,
got to
we got
have-
to punch
Yeah.
the scores. We were the girls that did the punching of the scores over in the school. They had it at the schoolhouse,
Mhm.
and they had these Grange meetings and like the Fanos and the Monroes and see
Balkies and.
Bertha Abbott. Remember? See, on the corner of Pajaro and Harvest is where Sheriff Abbott lived. Well, that was his wife was my mother's cousin. So that's how we happened to know them. And she happened to be a member of the Grange too, and I think she was the one that played the piano.
Yes.
She was great, big, old-fashioned.
And even before that, in that house on Maple Street, we lived next door to the Rogers. Remember Loretta Rogers?
Yeah.
And her dad was sheriff, wasn't he?
No, he was a policeman.
Police, yeah.
And every day around 12 o'clock, he walked home from the police department, he had lunch. And I was scared to death of policemen. I also had an uncle who was chief of police here. And, no, he was captain one day. He wasn't chief of police, he was a captain. But anyway, whenever he came to our house, I would go and hide behind the chair, peeking out after him. I was scared to death of policemen.
Were you a naughty child?
No.
But you know, you said that anything special out there in those days when we were very young, it was a struggle almost to exist, and Daddy would go to work and Mom would take care of all of us. There were four of us eventually, cooking and cleaning and all that, and taking care
Feeding
of other
chickens.
animals,
Yeah,
yes.
during the Depression, they had chickens, you know, and Daddy put in a crop of beans one year during the Depression, and he harvested them and put them in the warehouse, and that was when the Depression, or the Wall Street crashed, and he lost, I think they had a few shares of Transamerica. I always remember that, and he came in and said, well, that's gone. And then the darn bean price was so low, he didn't sell them, and finally he had to, and I don't know what he ever got for them.
And you know what Daddy did? He had in that land in back on Del Monte going north, he had a racetrack, and my uncle and did Daddy and Uncle ever have their motorcycle shop?
They had a motorcycle shop on San Luis.
Yeah, and these motorcycle racers would come out and race their motorcycles.
Oh, my goodness.
Where was that exactly? Where was that? Behind your house?
But the house was on the corner, here's Williams Road and here's Del Monte, and here was our house on the corner, and then there was a big lot down here, and that's where they made their motorcycles.
Oh, we hated that. It was so dusty and noisy. Oh, I hated motorcycles. But Uncle Everett was a motorcycle fan, and they'd owned this bicycle and motorcycle shop on San Luis Street, right where, what's there now, parking lot, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, because there used to be a slough there. And then, and back of, that's where Mr. Lisk bought it. Stan Lisk bought it. That shop from them. And because he'd go out there and Mr. Lisk would show me how he'd throw his thumb away. Oh. How do you do that? He used to do it like this, you know, and then he'd throw his thumb away. I always remember that. And the library was on the corner where Bank of America is now.
Oh, that beautiful
Beautiful Carnegie Library.
Oh, we hated
That was a shame.
We had one of those when I was growing up too, and I hated when they took it down. That was just a beautiful library.
First time my dad walked me up that aisle, and Mrs. Humphrey was the library. She was a real old state lady. Remember how Maggie used to wear her hair on the newspaper? And she sat there and she was so still. And you know, she'd be so serious and scare you to death. I was just quaking by the time, because I loved to read. And so, I was so thrilled to get a library card. Oh gosh, that was one of the best things that ever happened. And then the children's library was over here. I remember that. So that was my memory of that building.
Did you walk to the library?
Well, no, my dad, worked in town, so we'd come in with him, and he made an appointment to take me in there. And then he always had a car. We always had a car, old Ford. You have a picture in there of the old Ford?
I don't.
But he always had a car there on Maple Street. He had a car.
What, did you have like picnics? Did you go on picnics
Oh,
or family
yeah.
outings? And what about the little railroad that went out to the old picnic grounds? Did you
Well,
ever?
that was before our time.
That was gone before then. But
Yeah.
did you use the picnic grounds out there?
No, it was a narrow gauge and went
Yeah.
to Spreckles.
Yeah.
Yeah, but used to be one that kind of, I think, went out the Alisal, wasn't there? I
Yeah,
think
the
so.
one went from, the station was like on Pajaro and
See, that was before, I don't remember that.
like one of these second streets right in here. That was where the station was, but I know they used the picnic grounds for quite a few years.
But
after
it also
that.
used to go out to Salachi's Grove.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
There's a picture of the little cars.
Oh my
And
goodness.
that's a picture of me with my cousin.
See, we had cousins that lived on Maple Street. So my mother would bring us, she'd come into town to shop, and she'd bring us and leave us there at their house. And that was our greatest joy, to be able to skate on cement sidewalks.
This is Central Park. Here's my mom.
So where did you go to high school at
Salinas High.
Salinas High? That's all they
Took
have.
a bus.
Well, when did the buildings and the people start coming into the Alisal
In
area?
the Depression.
During the Depression.
The Okies arrived.
Yeah, and we call that rat camp. They build just, just old.
They called it Hebron Heights too.
Right.
And it was all, as you're going out toward the Alisal, it was all to your left there where all those houses are.
Kind of in that big
Swell, like that used to be pigs there, I remember. And they make these little shacks, and so the Okies arrived slowly. And we didn't mean it, we didn't know anything about derogatory terms.
Yeah.
It was just, they were normal, we called them Okies. It's like, we called black people niggers, and we called nigger toes, and nigger heaven, and, I mean, it never
And
meant
there was a
anything to
nigger
us.
in the wood pile.
Yeah, nigger in
Yeah.
the wood pile.
It didn't have the
Didn't
connotation.
no, we were just little innocent kids. And we had a wonderful, wonderful life. Really had a great time.
So, by your father working in town and you coming in town and having relatives in town, were you aware of an attitude about the way the Alisal was changing?
Always. There always was an attitude.
Oh,
Across the, not when we were older.
Oh, it was across the tracks.
when we went into high school, yeah, that
Oh,
was
it was
different.
considered across the tracks.
Yes.
So it
It's
wasn't
worse
just,
now,
it
of
just
course.
wasn't the influx of the Okies that had the the attitude, it was just because it was across town,
But
the
no,
other side.
it really, it didn't develop until after the Depressions came.
And there too, we have in the school from first to eighth grade out there, all the town kids with their fathers working in the lettuce industry, or the more.
Well, they all went to school here together, and then you were all together too,
Yeah, they
so,
all been people.
yeah.
Ed cliques.
They all were in the schools here in town. Then when you merged into high school, you were an outsider because you were from out there.
Out there, yeah. And Fruitdale wasn't in existence.
No.
That's where our great-grandfather had settled. That's where my dad was raised out there. But that didn't seem to, I don't know, I didn't know many people from Fruitdale
No.
at that time.
So your great-grandfather was
He was
it
homesteaded out there.
out there?
Yeah.
And then your grandfather, and so you've been here for a long time, your
Robert
family.
Adcock, He came from Illinois, Macomb, Illinois. And homesteaded 600 acres out there. Poor as church mice. Had 6, 7 children, and Cole Road out there. It's named after one of the daughters married a Cole. And there's a lot of, they were all raised out there. One of them went off and joined a circus, and they had quite a history.
And Daddy's mom came from Sweden, and that's where we got our Swedish ancestry. And she married Grandpa Adcock, who came from Kentucky.
No, Grandpa Adcock, that was great-grandfather's son, and they were raised out in Fruitdale.
Okay.
So Grandpa Adcock went to college in San Jose, became a teacher, but he couldn't, they weren't paying anything for teachers, so he moved up to Portland, Oregon, and had a newspaper distributorship for the Call Bulletin. And that's where he met our grandmother. Sophia Wiren from
And
Sweden.
Wiren, and we always call it Wiren, but it's Wiren, and it's the street out this side of Del Monte Avenue.
Oh,
They named the street after
And my cousin who's visiting is a Wiren.
that's interesting.
Yeah, see, so we're all immigrants, but when they came, they couldn't speak a word of English, but they sure learned to speak it. I gotta put that in. And proud to be an American.
So in high school, were you in high school at the same time, or you?
I was a senior when she became a freshman, I think.
Oh.
Yeah. I graduated in 40.
And I graduated in 42.
So the war was going on.
Yes.
What was that like
Oh,
for you to be going in to to high school during the wartime? And what did you do as far as war efforts? Did you?
Well, see, the war, I got through high school before the war started. I was in junior college, and you were in high school?
Yes,
Yeah, because I was in junior college at the time, I remember.
and we lost all of our Japanese classmates.
Mhm.
Oh, that was terrible. And we had blackouts. I remember I worked down in the basement at Porter and Irvin's, helping wrap Christmas packages. We'd have blackouts. You had to kind of feel your way around.
And I remember December 7th, I had a date that night. I finally got a boyfriend.
Star paid off.
That star paid off. And he took me to the show and everything was blacked out. That night, from then on, everything was blacked out. Every night you had to put blankets over your windows and everything. So we didn't really feel the effect of it, except for that. And, later on, why we had to have ration stamps and everything was rationed. But in school, now when you, was it the last year you were in school?
42.
42, yeah, because that was the year that I graduated from Hartnell in junior college, I should say, in 42, June of 42.
Salinas Junior College.
Mm-hmm.
That used to be where the art room was at Salinas High.
Mm-hmm. So anyhow, yeah, I went 4 years, of course, Salinas High. And then I became hostess of the rodeo in 1940. And that was a big point in my life. And that's how I met my husband. He saw my picture in the paper. He wanted to date with me. And I'm not dating any old cowboy. Let alone a blind date. I wouldn't go on a blind date. But I met him 2 years later. I was married. So we started our marriage during the war.
And was he in the military?
No, he was a farmer.
He was a farmer.
Yeah, that's one thing he always says, what am I going to tell my kids? I can't go in the service. They wouldn't take him because he was a farmer. And
Somebody has to grow the food.
yeah, I said, you just tell him you were at home working your head off trying to grow food for everybody. And he was. It was very difficult. And during that time, it was hard to get labor. And eventually, one time we had the German war prisoners that worked for us. And then eventually we rented the land to the Waiuli people to raise rubber for the government, and the Department of Agriculture rented it and raised Waiuli to make rubber, or experimenting in making rubber. So we rented that land to them. And there were it was hard work because you had a lot of lack of labor.
Now, you met your husband when he came to Salinas, right?
With the night fighters. He was in the
So
Army.
you came to Salinas when?
1944.
44. And you came to the Salinas Army Air
The
Base?
Salinas Army Air Base.
Now, where was that?
It's the airport, it's the present airport. The Army
So-
built the present airport.
Somebody told me that it was out
There was an American Legion airport.
American
Oh, no.
Legion Airport.
That was the old airport.
And
On
Laurel
Laurel Drive was the
was the
runway.
runway, okay. That was the
American Legion Airport.
American Legion Airport.
And Daddy remember Daddy used to
Yeah.
take us out to
To see the
airport?
airplanes?
Yes,
Oh,
Daddy was so
yeah.
fascinated with the
Oh,
airplanes.
yeah. Every time, if ever an airplane went over like a tri-motor, remember, he'd say, come out and look at this, come out and look at this.
Yeah, it was so exciting.
Yeah.
So you were you flew planes?
No, I was a crew chief.
Oh, okay. So how did you meet?
Well,
Oh, this is gonna be good.
we
Well,
can,
tell them like it is.
we
When you say
couple,
we.
two other buddies and myself came to town, and we went to the USO, which was in the next block. And I saw this tall blonde there in the dance hall, and I sent one of my friends over to dance with her so I could look at her.
And I want to tell you, he was not, this fellow he sent over was not tall, he was this little fellow.
So he brought Jerry over and introduced us to us, and I don't know how it worked out, but anyway, her dad gave us a ride back to the air base that evening, and I started calling her and we started dating, and
I worked on the base.
Oh, you did?
I was clerk in charge of the civilian post office.
Oh,
so when my airplane was flying, sometimes I used to go over and visit her. And we got to dating, and, you know, she finally asked me.
That was 63 years ago.
63 years, my goodness.
That was 64 years ago, because we've been married for 63 years.
That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah. Probably closer to 65 years ago.
Yeah, you see, my dad was very prominent in the USO at that time. They put on shows and plays, and a lot of her friends met fellas in the Army, like Martin and Carol met over at the Alisal school because she played the piano, and her future husband also played the piano. And my dad had asked them to come over and play for a dance or something, and that's how they met. And she happened to be a good friend of ours. And
Yes, the Lorenzens
Yeah.
lived on Ryder. They
Yeah.
were, when you go down Del Monte and Ryder, then
They
you
went-
turn east and they had a big house out there.
yeah, they've been married 66 years.
Oh my goodness.
And so that, like a lot of his friends met girls, that we'd go to the USO and dance, you know, all the time. It
That
a
was
fun
that.
time.
That was how you finally found your boyfriend. For some of them, huh?
Yeah, I had some nice boyfriends. Yeah, I didn't realize there was a chance.
So during the wartime, where did you go for your dates? What was the social, besides the USO, what kind of activities did they have for, and then even after married, as your young marrieds, before you have children in your lives, what did you do?
Theater, show.
We went to theater, we went to dinner at the
Jeffrey Hotel.
Jeffrey
And
Hotel.
that was here in
That was
Salinas?
where the bank is present.
Yeah, right there in Alisal and Salinas and Maine.
And we used to go down in the
Not there
cafeteria, what is now, where the theater is, what was the name of that?
Is it the Franciscan?
Oh, there's a
Franciscan.
Franciscan Hotel, yeah, that burned out. But there was the, right across the street from there, what was the name of that
Caminos?
restaurant there?
Salinas?
No, there was a Caminos Hotel, but there was a famous coffee shop there.
Bluebell? Was it the Bluebell?
Well, that was down on Main Street, yeah.
Oh,
Mhm,
that
yeah.
permit? Which one? are you trying to remember.
It was on the corner of Central and Main. There was a restaurant there and coffee shop like. But we'd go to the Pet Creamery,
Yeah.
you know, after school sometime.
After the football.
I know this fellow I'd met, Bill, his name was, and I was going to Hartnell, and I met him by the Panther, where the Panther used to be in front there. And he says, Pat, he says, you want to go down and have a Coke? And I said, oh, I don't know. He says, well, I want you to come down and hear this new song. There's a song called Elmer's Tune. I said, there's no song named Elmer's Tune. That's a dumb name for a song. So we went down to the Pet Creamery, and I heard Elmer's Tune.
And that was the name of it?
You know, they had those little things, tables, you could put the money in and press whichever one you wanted, and this big Nickelodeon.
Yeah, you'd have a milkshake, or you'd have a Coke, and after dates, when you'd go, like when you'd go out for a date, you always stop by at the Pet Creamery and had apple pie and a Coke or something like that afterwards. It makes me sick to think of eating at that time.
And remember, I don't know if you ever did it, but remember when it was a fad to take one of those long handle spoons and make a bracelet?
No.
I did that.
Oh, my goodness.
Couldn't tell by that. No, but we had a lot of fun down there. That was a great gathering spot for the high school and the high school.
What do they have? Do they have like a roller skating rink or any kind of
Yes,
bowling
not-
alley? or
not
anything?
here. Not here. Out in the outside,
Big barn.
at the big barn.
Yeah,
The big barn, they had a roller skating.
Oh, so it was in the Alisal, but not here in
and
town.
the bowling alley is right over here next
The old
to.
armory.
Yeah,
It's where?
well,
The Armory Building.
The armory
Oh, okay.
building, the old armory building, not the big armory,
the
but the old.
bowling alley is where, it's across from the Wilson building.
Yeah,
Just
Yeah.
it's on, yeah, it's on.
But originally, that was the Armory.
That was the armory.
Oh, I thought you were
I can
talking
read-
about the armory.
No, I can remember going there and seeing Uncle Ever leave for, no, it was Uncle Clifton left to go into the service. I remember the folks taking me there. they were all getting, I guess it was the local National Guard or something. No, but that used to be a bowling alley there.
And movie theaters, there were movie theaters and.
It's the Fox, and the Crystal.
Yeah.
Of course, you didn't go down that part of town very often.
So that had changed already by the time you were teenagers.
The Crystal, what did they call it, the Flea House?
Yeah.
Scratch house.
Do you know that when Dillinger, they finally killed Dillinger, remember, we mom took us down there, and we saw these
It's
pictures
on the news.
of him, you know, he was dead, lying, and you can see where he
They
was
had his
shot.
car touring around places for a while.
And it
things.
flies,
Yeah.
remember, oh,
I'll never forget. We were just little, I forget how old we were, but we never forgot that, I'll tell you.
Flies.
And we, well, he was laid out on a slab and there was a fly crawling
It's
around.
actually his whole body? Because
Huh?
nobody
Yes.
It's on the news.
It was on the news.
Oh,
Yeah.
Fox News.
Never know.
Yeah. And and we used to remember we go to Shirley Temple movies all the time.
Oh,
I've still got a scrapbook I made of Shirley Temple.
But you could go to movies for 15 cents.
Mickey Mouse matinees,
Yes.
10 cents for Mickey Mouse matinees.
always.
One day, Mom couldn't get us in because she didn't have the car or something, and we were gonna walk because we wanted to go to the movies so badly on Saturday after. I guess she must have relented and we got to go in. Because my cousins, lived on Maple Street, so we'd get to go to the movies with them. But that was a form of entertainment for us too. But you talked about picnics. We used to go on a lot of picnics.
Daddy would plan them with
Yeah.
the Lees, the Larsons, and the Bears. The good friend, they had these good friends, and they used to get together and play cards, and they'd go on picnics. And I remember Daddy, he always planned these things, like Pat always doing. And he planned to go out to Moss Landing and go on the slough in a boat.
Yeah.
And Lillian and Daryl would not get on that boat, so that ended
That wrecked our
Daddy's
Oh, we
salad.
were so disappointed. But Mom always made macaroni salad. Oh, that was the best and we got an orange and a banana. We were so tickled. And I forget when I don't remember they were barbecuing or anything. They just
No.
had sandwiches.
Yes.
And boiled eggs. I remember boiled eggs. And we'd go up to San Juan Brave and find a nice picnic spot there, under trees and where it was green. And we'd put out the blanket and we'd all sit down. And remember, then the post office used to have their picnics out in Toro Park.
And Big Sur. Oh,
And
no,
Big-
I get, yeah, Big
Yeah.
Sur.
And they'd have barbecued steak. Oh, that was like heaven. And beans and what else do you remember?
Well, now when you were talking about that, when I was thinking this morning about our younger life, when Daddy and Mom built, they sold the corner property out there on Del Monte and Williams to the school, and there's the new school building there, and they Vince Moore built a new home for them across the street. And I was thinking, Pat and I had a bedroom to ourselves, and the folks gave us a radio, and we'd listen to the station from Hawaii, listen to Hawaii music, and we always used to think we just love to go to Hawaii.
Yeah. So, and at the year that we moved into our house there, it rained. You don't know what rain is until you saw it that year. It just poured. And unfortunately, where my father had bought this property, was right across the street from where we lived, was a
lake.
So
When it rained, there was a
when it
lake.
rained, it was a lake. And you remember sitting in my bedroom seeing the rain come down, and it was all the backyard was flooded.
Yeah, they never filled it in before they built the house.
My goodness.
And so eventually they had to
Yeah.
dig out from under and have a pump under there. to
And,
pump the water.
and gradually, as the Okies came, then gradually people would, now, Charlie Burke was an entrepreneur who owned a lot of property there on Del Monte Avenue, and he'd build these, with the help of Mr. Tynan, and they'd build these shells of houses,
Just little,
and just a shell. I mean, just 2x4s with a covering and a roof. And they'd sell them to people, and then they would finish them out. And there's a lot of those houses still standing out there.
What about gypsies? Were there gypsies out in
I don't think we ever had any gypsies, we had hobos.
Yeah.
Because I know Mom would always shoo us in the house when she saw a hobo or a bum, they call them bums, come. But they'd always, she'd ask them to do something, they'd do something, she'd give them something. But we had a wonderful childhood, so free. We just ran those fields and
everybody was as poor as we were, so we didn't know the difference.
we didn't know we were poor.
Because we had secondhand clothes and secondhand cars.
Yeah.
I went to school one day and I ran back. Mom and Daddy got this secondhand Studebaker, and these two teachers were in the schoolroom, and I came back. I said, "We got a new car. We got a new car." They said, "What kind?" I said, "It's secondhand."
It was at the great big square one.
Yeah.
I think Mr. Ekman, owned it. It was secondhand from him, wasn't
They
it?
got it from the Lees.
Maybe, was it the Lees?
I
thought it was
thought so.
Mr. Well, maybe he
Well, I know Mr. Ekman used to
drive one like it. I always thought it was big, but maybe it was the Lees he got it from. But anyhow, we were happy little squirrels. Because we were like little squirrels. We were very shy. Anybody come around, I can remember standing in back of my mother and being very shy. And I remember as a little girl, they were trying to teach me to do this Charleston, and I worked and worked and worked.
And Mom had a piano teacher come to the old house.
Miss
there on-
Bernoni.
Miss Bernoni, and here's this tiny little lady, tiny little feet. I thought, I want to be little like that. Yeah.
And so finally I did learn to do the Charleston, but it was not the fat anymore. But anyway, I wanted to get back to my dad, because as things progressed, we had this acreage there, and he sold about 2 or 3 pieces of property to different people, and he was serving water to them. And somebody complained about his, the stewards
Leonard
complained
Stewart.
about his water service to the PUC. So
Which
they,
was then the Railroad Commission.
yeah, the Railroad Commission. And they wrote him a letter and said he had to stop serving the water, or else he had to become a company. And I can still remember them talking about it.
I
My
can
mother
too.
argued and argued, "No, I don't want to become a company." My dad, of course, wanted to become a company. And we'd form a company and serve it. So my dad went out, so that's how the Alco Water was formed. And it's got a notorious history we won't go into.
But when he first started that, he had us out there helping them fill in the ditches and cleaning the lamps on the lanterns that he had to put out when they were open
And
ditches.
reading meters.
And filling those with,
Oh, we didn't even have meters because I
No.
did the billing. I did the billing,
No.
$1.40 for 700 cubic feet. I remember that as long as I can.
Well, where do you get the water from? I mean,
Oh,
the
well.
well.
the well? You had a well.
And we were the only ones along that had one.
We had a well, and I remember him coming one Sunday, the well broke down, and my dad came in, they worked and worked and worked, and don't know how frustrating it is to work on something you can't get fixed. Came in, he says, "I think I'm gonna commit suicide." And that scared me so, I never forgot
I
that.
don't remember that.
Yeah, oh, he was so frustrated, and finally, I guess they must have gotten it fixed, because they
Yeah.
continued to serve water. And then we got the other well pump over there on Wyron Street. And then somebody talked him into putting a great big tank, so that we had reserve. That was another traumatic thing. And then we got another well over on Barden Road. And we've all been through all that, because, I did the bookkeeping for years, and
I had
Jerry
to
and,
stay home and in the office. The office was in our house.
yeah.
Where the dining, they made the office where the dining room was.
Yeah, and we had somebody had to be there to collect.
Because people came to the house to pay.
And how old were you then?
Teens, early teens.
I was, we moved there in 1935, I think it was, 36, January 36, so I was 14. Was I
I was
14?
12.
14, 12, and we lived there until I got married in 42, and then you got married in 45. But the water company was it still in the house, or had they moved it out?
No, they moved down Williams Road.
Williams Road, they moved it out finally, but we lived with it for all those years.
So, Did you get married in Salinas, or did you have big weddings, either both of you?
did.
Or
I did. Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay.
I married in the Sacred Heart Church. In October 11th, I would have been married 66 years. And my mother made my wedding dress, white satin, and my aunt had gotten married several years before, and her mother, she'd gotten this beautiful Venetian lace veil, you know, and I just fell in love with it, and I wrote to her and asked her if she'd lend it to me, and she lent it to me to be married in.
And I was her bridesmaid.
And she was my bridesmaid. And my husband and I ended up having 5 children. All 5 of my children were married in that church. And my husband was buried from that church.
And she had 3 daughters, and then she had twin daughters. And here her husband was a rancher. Where are all the boys? Well, when she was going to have the twins, she was certain one of them would be a boy.
Yeah.
And my mother called and said, the twins are born, and did she get the 2 darling little girls?
So that was, and my 2 sisters, Jerry and had 2 boys and a girl, and my other sister had 2 boys and a girl.
Oh,
My brother had a boy and a girl.
so where were you married?
In our house, Mom and Daddy's house on Del Monte Avenue.
And is the house still there? Is it still?
And the old house, the one, the second house, this was the one they tore down on Maple Street. The other one, there's further in the book, the one on the corner of Williams and Del Monte. Then they built the house across, and that's the one John and I got married in. That's my mom, our beautiful mom.
Gorgeous.
She had red hair. She was
It's
just
beautiful. So, what about your wedding gown? Now, this was just right after the war, right?
And I didn't have a wedding gown. In fact, you know, I thought we were going to get married in the church, and John couldn't come he had to wait until he got a 3-day pass. So
At that time, I was stationed at Daggett Army Air Base,
yeah,
down outside of Barstow.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
so you had already left Salinas.
We got married on a 3-day pass.
And I went to Porter and Irvin's. I had bought this beautiful piece of brocade material. I was going to make my wedding dress, and when I found out that I couldn't get married in a wedding dress, I took it back, and they bought it back for me. And I went to Bartlett's, and I bought a suit, kind of an American Beauty suit.
Oh, yeah, it was kind of,
And then I've got a picture of it.
And I kind of wore a uniform.
And then we got married at, Judge Jeffrey married us at Mom and Daddy's house.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
And then we honeymooned. Her husband very graciously loaned us his uncle's car.
Chrysler New Yorker.
And we drove over to Carmel to the Pine Inn.
Pine Inn.
Mr. McCarter was Secretary of Chamber of Commerce here in Salinas, and Dale had phoned over and tried to get reservations for us at the Pine Inn, and there weren't any available. So Mr. McCarter got us this room. It wasn't in the main part. And he had this beautiful bouquet of flowers there for us when we got there that evening. And that's where we spent our honeymoon on 3D bath. The car was just full of rice, and we went, the next morning we drove out and swept all the rice out.
So then you went back to,
And I went back to the Air Base at Barstow.
and you stayed here?
Then you came down shortly after,
I remember
maybe within a month or so, yeah. But I was gonna tell you about the Pine Inn. When we stayed at the Pine Inn, we stayed there for the 2 nights. And we included breakfast, and the bill was $18.05.
Oh, my goodness.
And something else he won't tell you, but I'll tell you. He broke the key in the door.
Well, it was pot metal.
and he took the bill back when they went on, what,
We've been
was it your
back,
50th?
Yeah,
Or what?
and I showed them the bill. They wouldn't believe, they took pictures of the bill.
Did they give you a free night?
2 nights, $18.05.
You have to change the tape.
It's time to change the
Okay.
tape.
It doesn't seem like it's been an hour.
No!
And talk about all this
Oh,
stuff.
it's wonderful.
Why don't we start this session with your telling about your experiences of the air base and what it was like having that much influx of military here for being here and then for the Army base, and then what it was like for you. Did you spend your early married years traveling from in the military, or how long were you in the service?
We came here, I was stationed at Orlando, Florida, and it was a unit, it was the 348th Night Fighter Squadron, and we had A-20 aircraft. It was a twin-engine, medium-sized bomber. And we came to Salinas, actually, I was in the flying echelon, so we flew from Orlando, Florida to Salinas, and it took us 3 days. We stopped 3 times. And the rest of the unit came by train. And when we stationed at the base, we started training, and we're training new pilots in night fighter squadrons, which it would be an airplane would be flying by a stop and would fly at night and shoot down enemy bombers. And one evening, like I told you earlier, we met at the USO. We went into town, met at the USO, and we got to dating, and then I got transferred to Daggett, California, and because the need for night fighters was over with, and so I went into a fighter training squad at P-38s. That's when Jerry and I got married, and we got married on a 3-day pass. Then she came down, and we lived in Yermo in a cottage court, and it was pretty rustic. They used to heat, the water was heated by the sun during the afternoon, so you had to get an early shower if you wanted warm water. And then it was my final assignment was at Daggett, and when in 1940, close to the end of 1945, the war was practically over, and we started getting out. And I got out in January 1946. I was discharged, and I came to Salinas, and we bought our first house in 1946 on Toro Avenue. It was $7,250 with a 4% loan. And I think the payments were, what, $54 a month, which included taxes and insurance. And I worked with the water company. I worked for her dad for a while. And then I took the post office examination. I went to work at the post office.
You read meters for the PG&E?
Well, I worked for PG&E for a short while. I was reading meters for PG&E for a short while. And then I went to work at the water company. But not the water company, I went to work at the post office. And I worked for about 5 years. I became a foreman. And then a couple of more years I became assistant superintendent. And a couple of more years I became superintendent. And I became postmaster. And I was postmaster for 20 years.
For the entire Salinas?
Yes. And I retired as postmaster after 20 years. And that was, what, 16 years ago I retired.
Well, you know, when you asked him about the impact of the air base on this community, bringing all these soldiers in, and it impacted mostly a lot of young women who we had never been around all these people before. Of course, there were the fellows from over at the Fort Ord Army Air Base, Fort Ord base, and they'd bring those soldiers over, and we used to have a dance with them. But it brought a lot of, well, what can you say? We lots of restaurants, I'm sure, the bars, the bowling alleys. It was good for.
It was good for the economy.
Yeah, and people from Salinas working out there at the air base. Lots of my friends were out there. So it was an interesting time.
An integration too of cultures in a way, because it brought so many different people from the East Coast, out here. And as Fort Ord has done, I mean, you don't ever hardly run into anybody that is new to Salinas that wasn't influenced by their stay at Fort Ord. So many times I run into people, well, how'd you happen to come here? I was at Fort Ord when I was in the Army.
And they liked it so much here, they stayed.
Mm.
the weather brought us.
Yeah.
That's her, and a lot of, married local girls too.
And I always felt like, John always tells everybody, he said, well, the reason I stayed in Salinas is because I fell in love with the weather. And I thought, okay, so he fell in love with the weather. I was just an excuse for him to stay.
I was born and I grew up in Boston, and I discovered the weather here, and I found it really. And when we got married, Jerry thought we were going. When I got out of the army, we were going to live in Boston. And no way, I didn't want to go back to that snow, and cold
You
winters,
need to go to the East
and hot summers. And I know a lot of times when I was in when I first went in the army, I ended up at basic training in Miami Beach, Florida, and it was in June, and it was horrible. And I ended up with a bunch of Texans, and they ribbed me about my accent. I used to say, the reason they have to park in Harvard Yard is because there's no parking in Harvard Square. So I had to get over that accent, and sometimes I fall into a few words that I don't use too often. But anyway, I fell in love with the area as well as falling in love with Jerry. And,
But Jerry thought she was going to Boston.
Mm-hmm.
right.
How long did you date before you married?
Was it a year?
Yeah. A little over a year, yeah.
But you never talked about where you were going to live?
I gave her a ring for Christmas in 1944. And I think her dad wanted an engagement period, so we were engaged for 3 months before we got married. But anyway, that was 63 years ago.
Now, you bought a house in the Alisal area also? You bought a house
On
on
Toro
On Toro
Avenue,
Avenue, yeah.
Did they start building a lot of houses?
Yes.
After
That was the
war?
Toro subdivision.
That was the-
Yeah, and Hanson
They
subdivision.
call it the something, didn't they call it?
Hanson, no, Hanson subdivision.
Big Hat Hanson subdivided.
Subdivision.
Yeah.
That included Paloma, Taro, Cross,
Tampa.
Tampa,
Miami,
Miami, because I lived in Miami.
Sycamore.
Yeah, Sycamore. That whole triangle was developed.
And did people mostly from the Alisal area buy, or was it from all over, or?
All
in
over.
Salinas?
All
And
over.
then, people that married during the service, or people that, even.
You know who bought the house we rented was Leach. He worked for the county. He was a county worker, and he'd gone off to service, built this darling little one-bedroom house, darling house, and we rented it when we were first married. And they build houses, and like service people, and like my girlfriend I was telling you about that married an army fella. They rented one on Paloma, I remember. And did you know? Yeah, Louise and Frank did, and Aunt Anna May, of course, lived in the house that she lived in.
Yes.
And, yeah, there were just people who were getting started in families.
PG&E, a fellow that worked for PG&E, the Browns.
Most of them out of the military and back home or.
A lot, like myself, fell in love with the area.
And stayed, yeah.
And when they got out of service, they stayed.
And then the GI Bill made it easy too.
Yeah. So I was in the service 3.5 years, and that was plenty for me.
Yeah, where were Marilyn and Charles from?
Stockton.
He was from Stockton.
And he was with PG&E. Was he transferred?
Yes. Well, he bid on the job.
He did on the job. Oh. See, that's the way a lot of people would do. The houses weren't that expensive, and you could afford to buy them.
And what's his name down the street that was Langendorf Red? Remember he drove a Langendorf Red truck?
Oh, John Weir's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So most of the people that were buying the homes were not the Okies, but they were the military, the younger generation, younger ones coming up.
Quite a few of them, yes. Probably most of them were.
Yeah, the Okies integrated. Their Okies were wonderful, hard-working people. I can't say enough. I mean, if they worked for you, they worked for you, and they were honest, very honest. And they worked a lot in the lettuce,
And their children bought a lot of the houses in the subdivisions.
Yeah. And then, like I said, Mr. Burke went into the subdivision business, and built these little houses, and a lot of Okies bought those, where you finished them off. New Deal, May,
Burke Street.
Cow.
Street, Cow.
It was
yeah.
called Doss at that time.
New Deal,
Yeah, New Deal.
New Deal.
And then
Sunset.
at the end of Del Monte Avenue, there's a great big pig farm down there, and that eventually went into subdivision over the years.
What about the dairy? Remember the dairy that was on the corner of Ryder and Del Monte?
Ryder and Del Monte.
There was a dairy there.
Can any of the buildings from early times when you were growing up, or, just even when you were first married, are there any landmarks or anything still out there that were there then?
You mean in the whole area? Are there any landmarks?
I mean, like the library is not there anymore. Right over here, it's here now, and I mean how things have changed. Are there anything still left?
Well, there were just the farmhouses.
Is
and
it
the
there?
Williams.
We had Hanson's house on Toro.
Well, the house is there, but
The house.
they moved it, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and our old house was moved, but the Williams house finally was taken down just recently, I think, it burned down, I think,
It was just east of the Alisal.
Yeah, that was a beautiful old home. Yeah, that was there from, the Jarvises lived there for a while. And now that's all houses now. I don't know if you've been out there lately.
I was amazed when I first came back to Salinas after being gone 18 years, 19 years, how much it had grown. When I first came here, Northridge wasn't there yet, or, right from where we lived, it was all broccoli, and that's all houses now, and there was a big, huge house that looked like a haunted house. The kids were afraid to walk past, and this was up right off Alvin and North Main, and, that's all apartments, and I was just amazed at how much growth.
That's how I am when I go out the Alisal and see, where the Williams, we used to ride our bicycles down on Williams Road and stop and steal a few tomatoes.
We crawled through the fence. Oh, those were the best tomatoes
ever had.
They had a whole
Yeah.
field full of them.
And the Bardens owned the property across, and it's been about, how long are they just subdivided? Was Mom still alive when they started subdividing that? I don't
I
think
don't
so.
think she was.
In the last 10, 15 years, they just subdivided that Barden property there across from Williams Road where we used to live, across from the Alisal School.
And you know what I remember too, and I was thinking back about, they used to drive their cattle down Williams Road. And oh, that was so exciting to see all those cattle going out.
We used to sit on the fence,
Yes.
yeah, when it was time to ship them.
They weren't dairy cattle then, they were.
No,
beef
they
cattle.
were being shipped.
Ah.
They drive them down to the railroad station. Yeah,
Oh.
we'd see that. That was the highlight of our life too.
And I remember that the first bus that started driving out, and I remember I was in the classroom, and was it Rob's?
Rob's Transportation,
Yes.
yeah.
And here was this bus that took people into town, and that
My
was
dad
so
and I,
exciting.
my dad and I started taking that in the morning. I'd go to school, he'd go to work. And then, did you take it to go to high school?
No, a school bus.
A school bus? No, we didn't see, they didn't have a school bus to go into high school at that time. Or if they did, I always had X period that I had to take, so I'd have to get in early. But Daddy and I can still remember him having a bet with a bus driver when it was gonna stop raining. This was in 1940. He said, well, Rob, when is it gonna stop raining? I don't know, I'll bet you so-and-so.
And another thing I remember when we lived on the house on the corner there, the kids would stand there to go to junior college or whatever, and they would carve their initials in the fence, and Mom she typed this little square of paper and wrote it out. Fools' names like fools' faces are always seen in public places. Remember the newest boys?
Yeah.
Would stand there?
Yeah.
I forget who else, but there were.
Oh, and there was Bill Fees.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I always remember Mr. Thalke driving his girls to school,
Yeah.
remember, in
Yeah.
that Packard?
Yeah.
They always had a Packard driving down.
Yeah,
Main
between,
Street.
where we lived on the corner, there was a school. there was a Williams home, and then there was the Thalke residence at the corner of Old Stage and Williams Road. And that house is still there. I was trying to think of houses that were, things that were still
That's what
there.
I was
But
thinking.
there's not many things that were
No.
there
No.
Yeah.
that
But
are,
when did all the stores and the little shops and stuff start coming in?
well,
Because
like,
they-
on Williams Road there, when did the office, when Dad get that office there on Williams Road? Remember, when they used to have that 5 and 10 cent store there?
Before that, there was a Chinese store there, a Chinese grocery store.
Well, that was on Del Monte and Williams, yeah, that was the first.
No, where the office, 467, there was
There was a Chinese store
was-
there?
well,
Grocery store?
There was Moser's.
Oh,
Moses. Before it was Moser's, it was Chinese, yeah.
Yeah.
Was it after the Alisal was annexed by Salinas or before that? In 63?
In
I can't
63, is that when it was?
Oh, they were there before.
Yeah,
Yes.
before annexation.
Yeah.
Yeah. What, 64? 63 or
It
64?
was 63 or 64.
Yeah,
I'd have to look.
One of those years.
Yeah, that was before because, well, you know, York Gin was quite busy out there because he had that store on the corner and then he built a new store on Sanborn Road. And then they had all that shopping there.
That was the Gin family?
Gin family, York Gin, yeah. Yeah, they were the first Chinese people we knew, I think.
I think so.
The old, what's his name? What was
Billy?
Billy,
Billy, yeah.
yeah, old Billy came and we couldn't believe we had a Chinaman running that store. Yeah.
You had made the comment that right at the first of the war that you, all of a sudden you missed all of your
Classmates.
classmates,
Japanese.
your Japanese. Were there a lot of Japanese classmates?
Quite a few, yes. In fact, I wish I had my yearbook with me. We're still in touch with some of them, but my very best friend was Fuji Nishi, and we had art class together, and I just loved her. And they took her when they moved them all out, and when John and I first went back east on the train, we stopped in Chicago, and I got to visit with Fuji.
Did she die? Did she die?
So the ones from Salinas were taken someplace else?
They were taken to the rodeo
Oh,
grounds.
they were all taken here?
And then they were
what's-
distributed wherever they made them go.
Did her family come back?
Some of them.
Some of them did, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, Cookie did. I walked with a girl for many, many years, Cookie Habino. Of course, her husband became mayor of Salinas, Henry Habino, and they were all taken to camps, just little kids, if they remembered it. But then a lot of them came back. A lot of them had land here, you know, and there was kept and people were keeping it for them, and some of them got cheated out of some of them land. I know that there was something that not good going on. But anyhow, a lot of them did come back. A lot of them didn't. I mean, they settled in other places.
Well, Fujinichi, she stayed in Chicago.
There's some up in San Jose.
Mhm.
all over the
Yeah.
place.
But it was
Time.
such a surprising thing to go to school one day. And, you know, I was in Hartnell at a junior college at that time. And we didn't have too many of them in there. Of course, the war had started. And
Computer.
the computer room. So that was kind of a shock to us. I remember sitting in the gym there and having, who was president, I forget who was president of junior college at that time, came in and told us what was happening, and we listened to President Roosevelt.
Warner?
I don't know if it was President Warner or not.
No, Dr. Warner.
Dr. Warner, yeah, the college,
I
no.
think it was.
Was it? And then, because Roosevelt came in and made the announcement, I remember, and we were all sitting there. And, you know, at that age, you kind of understand, yet you don't understand. And life goes on.
Yeah, but it'd be a big
All we
shock.
had to do was cover our windows at night, and at that time, well, as time went on, and it got a little harder. And I remember I was sure glad when that darn thing was over.
Had to drive without your headlights at night.
Yeah, yeah. Had to drive without headlights.
And All of your buildings you had to have blankets on all your windows, you couldn't have lights on at all?
Blackouts.
Blackout, had dark curtains or whatnot.
And they would eventually, maybe they'd get better, at the beginning it was, you had to have blankets, but then later they'd get blackout curtains and all that.
Someone told me they had places where people went out to spot enemy
Yes.
planes coming in.
Yeah, I went out, I used to go out once a month and spot airplanes right above our ranch, on the Lester Ranch, and they had a little old schoolhouse there, and everybody would come, take their turns. We had certain days we had to be there, and every time you heard a plane, you had to go up and try to see what it looked like and write it down. And if it looked, you'd have to call somebody if it looked suspicious.
The top of the Salinas National Bank at that time was, had a look out there.
Salinas National Bank.
At that time it was Salinas National Bank.
Rob-a-bank.
Oh, okay.
That's Rubber
Yeah.
Bank now, yeah.
Rob.
That was the tallest building around the bank.
So
Well,
everybody
they
had
had
to, you had
lookouts
to take
all
your,
over.
you had to take your turn and watch for planes and did you have a little book, the outlines or something and?
Yeah, and then you reported if you saw 2 planes or 3 planes and what they looked like. And, oh, I remember doing that. That was when I was first married. That'd be 42, 43.
While she was watching for airplanes, I was in high school and I got a job picking weeds out of the Waiuli fields. We had these little low carts. We'd sit on them and go along and pull weeds out of them.
When did you do that? Were you still working at the airport too?
No, this was before.
Oh,
Bob Taylor was one of the people in charge out there. That was my steady boyfriend. I was reading my own gab the other day and this girl wrote, "And good luck to you and Bob in the future." We're so dumb when we're young.
yeah. Where'd you pull weeds?
Across from the high school, the Alisal High School,
Oh.
in that big field.
Oh, in that Martin field.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that was all in my.
That was all in Waiuli. Yeah, they had hundreds of acres in Waiuli.
And we knew Mr. Lee, Charlie Lee and his wife, they lived on the V where Alisal comes into Barden. There was the Waiuli plant there, and he used to be, was he a foreman or a bookkeeper?
He was an accountant.
Yeah, and then we got to see the Waiuli being treated at the plant down off of the highway. Remember? We'd go through, I
Yeah.
can still remember the smell of
Oh,
it.
yeah.
We still see her high school boyfriend from time to time.
Oh, really?
He lives in Gilroy.
Hollister.
Hollister, I'm sorry. He used to live in Gilroy. He lives in
How
Hollister.
how many students were in your graduating classes from high school?
Oh, gosh, I think there were maybe 300 or 400.
I think we had about 300 and something, 50. Ours was the first class to graduate in the stadium in 1940. It was a night
And there were-
graduation out there.
How many,
About
300?
300 to 400, I think it
I
was.
think that's what ours was.
And we graduated in the north end of the school, like the stadium, I remember.
Well, the pictures, there's those of us, Pat and me, at Central Park, when Central Park was, it's, you know.
Our mother used to wheel us down there all the time. See, she lived on Maple Street.
I
love
love
it.
Central Park is,
That's the one on Central
Yeah,
Park,
right
across
here.
from the park now.
yeah, that's a nice park.
Yeah.
And then Mom had a sister up in Grass Valley, and there's pictures of us up in Grass Valley. Was that where the chicken ranch was? She had chickens up there. I've got pictures of us with those
Chicken
straw
ranch?
hats on.
Chicken ranch would probably be us.
I
mean,
love
ours,
those
our
pictures
chicken
that
ranch.
really show where you are. It's so amazing.
And that picture of all of us on the back, that's our house on the Delmine Williams, and that was, I think, a birthday party. And I think Loretta Rogers was there, and our
Loretta
cousins.
Rogers.
And our cousins, Jimmy, Johnny, and June.
Yeah.
Adcock, and we always thought, Mom would let us come and stay overnight. Oh, we thought that, we got the country,
The little country
bumpkins came into town, got to stay overnight with our cousins. We had more fun. And I think that's the old goat, is that?
I was just gonna say, here's the date,
Yeah.
and somebody very, very, very blonde.
That's me, that's
That's
my
Jerry.
book, so I guess that's me.
I'll bring my book in if you want to see it.
Yeah.
I've heard stories about Oh, the two sisters.
Williams?
Williams.
Yes, the
Williams.
Williams.
Oh,
Yes.
Everything you heard is true.
She could drive through with bank service when nobody else did.
I remember them driving down Williams Road too, because they owned not only that beautiful, there was a beautiful Williams,
Beautiful
remember it,
house,
with the wisteria plumbing on it?
It was great.
Right next to the courthouse.
Yeah, where the
Yeah, right
courthouse
where the
is
courthouse.
now, and they tore that beautiful. It had an
Salinas
elevator.
shares
I remember
everything.
it had an elevator
It
too.
had an elevator,
Yes.
and we'd see the Williams, they always wore black and these old black hats.
Yeah.
Wasn't it
They
bad?
were characters.
Well, I heard that one of them was a very, very, very bad driver. And that's when
That
people
was
saw
Jenny.
him coming, that they would just literally park their cars and try to find an alley to hide in.
They had, when they lived over here where the courthouse is, the old Williams home was a 3-story, they even had an elevator in it. They had a 1941 Cadillac, and it was just a black Cadillac, 1941. And when they died, their estate was settled about 1947. And that car had less than 5,000 miles on it.
Oh my goodness.
So they just drove from this.
The attorney got
Funeral to funeral.
it. Yeah, they went to funerals and weddings.
Oh,
But I think the attorney ended up with the car,
Yeah.
because it was a treasure, you know.
oh, yeah.
She came driving out, she was a very good friend of my husband's grandmother, and she used to come out to visit her, you know. So she came, after I had my last children, she came tooling out one day in her little old car, and she says, "Pat, do you need help?" And here she brings this gal out, and she says, "They sent this girl to help me, but she can't help me. You hire her to help you." So I said, I needed somebody at the time, so I did, I hired her. Well, come to find out, I think she was a rather dubious character, because every weekend she had to go in and stay at the Jeffrey Hotel. So Maria, her name was Maria. Maria developed this cough that I didn't like. I thought, gosh darn, I don't want the kids getting anything. So I told her, I said, Maria, I think you better go back into town and go to the doctor and see about the cough, I said. And so I had to let her go, but I don't think she was a very good character. But oh, Jenny was so sweet to think of me to bring her out.
Aw.
Jenny and Belle.
Jenny and Belle.
Yeah.
And you know, I remember when my grandma, the one from Sweden, died, Daddy went into, they lived on Harvest Street. They had a 3-story home over there. And I was in the car, and I remember, I didn't understand about death or anything, and I remember the caretakers brought this stretcher out with a sheet over, and that was Grandma. And she was over there at Stewart reporting Daddy when they had her open casket. I remember being lifted up to look at Grandma in that casket, and it just scared me to death. Poor Grandma.
Yeah. That was the day she died, the day I had my first piano lesson.
And if you want to know what she learned on the piano, every time I hear smoke
Smoke
gets
gets in
in
your
her
eyes.
she learned to do that.
I think it was March 1932.
Oh, my.
But
I was 10 years old.
when I first started working at the Air Base as a clerk, there was an old building on the Anderson Ranch down this way at the end of the runway. And then they built a new post office up right at the front gate, and that's where I worked most of the time. But I met so many fellows that were there just before they were dispatched overseas. I often wondered if any of them ever got back. It was a time when, you know, I remember they had a bowling alley. I used to go bowling over there. Met a lot of great people, just good people to talk to. It was a good one.
Cocky lieutenants.
I found out
They
there.
had to be.
I found out
Cocky
that's where
pilot, lieutenant pilot.
if you're a handsome fellow, you don't have much of a personality, but if you're not, then you're.
Then you try.
Sometimes those handsome guys were kind of shallow. That's what I think.
No, I would agree with you. Yeah. Pretty faces.
Yes.
Pretty boys.
Well,
Fly boys.
how come you're talking about me?
Hey, you weren't a pilot.
Oh, why don't
Thank you ladies so much.
Oh, I'm so glad you could come.